Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make an easy pulled pork in the pressure cooker. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I'm so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Today we're making one of my all-time favorite super easy meals. We're going to be cooking up some pulled pork in the pressure cooker, saving us a ton of time, but sacrificing absolutely no flavor. Let's go ahead and get started. Now for today's recipe, we're going to be using pork shoulder. You want to use between about 3.5 to 5 pounds of pork shoulder for today's recipe. I have about 4 pounds right here. Now you're going to want to grab yourself a sharp knife, and we're going to cut this pork into, I say, about fist-sized pieces. All right, so we have our pork nicely cut up, so we're going to set this aside for now, and now we're going to mix up a nice little spice rub. We'll start with just a tablespoon of firmly packed light brown sugar, add 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and then for a little bit of heat, you can add between 1/8 and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper as well. Now we'll whisk everything together, and I like to kind of break up that brown sugar. It's not going to completely incorporate because it is a little bit more moist than the other ingredients, but just break it up and get everything as well combined as you can. All right, now we'll take this and we're just going to sprinkle it over our pork. And then I like to rub it into the pork. I want to make sure all sides get covered with a nice thin layer of this rub. All right, so our pork is nicely prepped, so go ahead and grab your pressure cooker now, and we're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil into the basin of that pressure cooker. And go ahead and set your pressure cooker to saute. All right, let's give that oil a couple minutes to get nice and hot, and once it is hot, now we can start cooking our pork. We're actually not going to be cooking it all the way, we're just going to be searing it. So I like to do this in batches, that way we don't overcrowd the meat. I'm just gonna start with like 3 or 4 pieces. Hear that nice sizzle. We'll go ahead and we're going to cook this pork on each side until it gets a nice sear all over. Now I like to let it sit for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then I'll use my tongs to just turn the meat and cook it on another side. And we'll just repeat until we have seared all sides of the pork. And then we'll remove this pork to a clean plate, set that aside, and then we'll do our next batch of pork. All right, I have 1 lone piece of pork here left to cook. All right, so after cooking all of our pork, it looks like we have a big kind of dirty mess at the bottom of our pressure cooker. There's a ton of flavor in here, so we don't want to lose any of that flavor. So we're going to grab ourselves 1 cup of chicken broth or chicken stock, and we are going to use this to deglaze the pan and get all of those little brown bits in there, which is going to add so much flavor to this pulled pork. Now I'm just going to drizzle this in. And while I do that, I want to scrape the bottom with a spoon or a spatula to kind of break up everything that's on the bottom there. All right, so we've deglazed the pan, so now we can go ahead and return our pork into our pressure cooker. All right, now before we start actually cooking this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And you're also going to want to add 1 cup of barbecue sauce. I like to use my homemade barbecue sauce that I just recently shared. If you don't have this on hand, you can use your favorite store-bought barbecue sauce instead. I'll just pour this over the meat. All right, now go ahead and grab the lid to your pressure cooker, and you are going to want to make sure that you have it set to sealing. That way it's not venting. That way the pressure can actually build. We are going to set this to cook for 40 minutes. So once the pork has cooked for 40 minutes, we are going to let the pressure cooker release naturally for 15 minutes. That means we're not going to touch it, it's just gonna sit there for another 15 minutes. Now, once that 15 minutes has passed, now we can release the pressure and flip that valve over to venting. And because I don't want to burn myself with the steam, and also I don't want to get any steam on my camera lens, I'm going to just use a towel to kind of protect my hand from that steam as it shoots up. All right, so let all of that pressure release, and once it has, we can go ahead and open up our pressure cooker. So our pork should be nice and tender now. You're going to want to grab yourself some tongs, and we are going to remove the pork over to a plate. And I'm just gonna do this in batches, that way I don't have too much meat on the plate at one time. Just grab yourself a pair of forks, and we are going to shred this meat now. Now, if you cooked everything properly, it should just absolutely fall apart as you shred it. Like, look at that. I barely touch it with a fork, and it's just falling apart and shredding so beautifully. Now, while I'm doing this, I'll go ahead and pull out any really fatty pieces, and I'll just discard those because we don't want those. I'll just shred all of the meat. We'll do our second batch of pork. All right, now once I've shredded all of the pork, I'll go ahead and put this in a large serving bowl. And if you take a look in the basin of your pressure cooker, you will notice that you should have a lot of liquid left in there. Now, I don't like to waste all this. I like to take a ladle and measure out like a nice spoonful of this. I'd say this is about a half cup to 2/3 cup, and then I'll just drizzle it over the meat. And then I like to toss the meat in this. This just helps keep it nice and moist. Now at this point, the meat can be served as is. If you'd like to add barbecue at this point, you can add about a cup of barbecue sauce and just toss the meat with that at this point. But I like to serve it like this. That way everyone can add exactly as much barbecue sauce as they like. Now I'm just gonna make myself a nice little sandwich, which is great because it's lunchtime right now. And of course I will be adding some of my homemade barbecue that I'll make sure to link to. All right, look at that. And that is how you make my favorite super easy pressure cooker pulled pork. If you guys tried this one out, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Love this sandwich.